All right, I'm back. It took a little while, but I've upgraded my tech, so I've got this proper green screen. I've got a good quality computer. I can now record using OBS. I guess some of you guys saw my disastrous attempts at live streams in the past, where I tried to use OBS on my 2013 MacBook Air, and it would run the cameras so slow that you could barely see motion. But those days are over, thanks to my patrons who helped me save up and get a good quality computer and some proper tech. So huge thanks to all of you, and particular thanks to one of you who doesn't want to be named, but you know who you are, and that large donation was very helpful. All right, while I was away, there were, proper grammar, some interesting things that happened. One of them was that a caller phoned into the David Pakman show. David Pakman is like a progressive YouTuber. I don't know exactly what to call him. Maybe he's on other platforms too. Anyway, the caller ran Name the Trait on Pakman, so that's what we're going to check out today. Now, forgive me for being overly hyped on this, but check this shit out. It just makes it pop up on screen. Oh, my life is easier now. Okay, let's check this video out.
Let's see who else we've got here. What about our caller from the 513 area code? Who's there from 513 today?
Hey, David. It's Brandon from Fort Lauderdale.
Hey, Brandon. What's going on?
Hey, David. So I was calling in. I know you've dealt with this sort of question a few times, and it's going to be off the topic of politics, and it's going to be more towards the ethics of veganism. So I just wanted to challenge you a little bit.
Sure.
I don't know if you've heard of the name the trait argument, but the basic premise is, can you name a trait that is present in humans that if it were in animals, that it would be morally unacceptable to kill the animal in that case?
I've never...
Wow, he just said it like the opposite way that I would say it, which is a trait absent in animals, which if absent in humans, would justify killing the humans. But he said it in reverse, talking about what would make it unjustified to kill the animal. Whatever, it's all good.
Thought about that, and I can think about it and get back to you, and obviously it's a question.
Will he get back to him? Call back, David. Wait, was it David? What was the guy's name? Did I just call some random guy David? We're gonna find out.
It would be morally unacceptable to kill the ethics. I was calling in. I know you've dealt with...
What's going on? 1-3 today.
Hey, David. It's Brandon from Fort Lauderdale.
Brandon.
Hey, Brandon. What's going on?
Well, I should just stop YouTubing. Can't remember names.
Can you name a trait that is present in humans that if it were in animals, that it would be morally unacceptable to kill the animal in that case?
I've never thought about that, and I can think about it and get back to you, and obviously it's a question that has been predetermined to get a particular response, which allows you to then make a particular claim. But I mean, you know,
okay, so he's doing the typical thing where he starts talking about how he doesn't like the question, right? But that's just basically an excuse for not having a good answer to the question. The question is obviously a challenge. Of course, it's supposed to elicit a particular kind of response, and then we're going to capitalize on that response. And the reason that's possible is because you hold a position that, once exposed, will be viewed as ridiculous by most people, right? So don't blame the question, blame yourself for holding the position.
Here's my thing in general. I'm usually against any kind of universalist, black-white drawings of...
Just listen to all these well-poisoning words. You like, he's asked him the question, he's like, universalist, black and white, line drawing. Like, look, we could go into an analysis of the argument and determine, like, you know, how it relates to universalism. I mean, I'm not even clear on that. You could run the argument on a particularist, but I don't know that David would know what particularism is. Black and white. In fact, why am I even doing an analysis on these things? I don't have to. You're not responding to the argument. What's your actual answer?
Lines in the sand on almost every issue. So
don't you just find it kind of slimy? Like, I don't know. No shade, David Pakman, Brandon. But like, don't you just find it shady when someone will just take all of these shots at the question instead of actually attempting a solid answer at it? Like, I mean, if you don't have an answer, then just say I don't have an answer. I don't know what to say to that. I'll get back to you, and just stop it there. Don't just go on to spew bullshit and try to, slime the question.
So if the idea is to kind of foment a discussion or create a discussion where if such a trait cannot be named, therefore it is wrong to eat all animals or something like that. I mean, I just think that any of those sort of universalist type arguments are
Okay, so again, universalist. I don't know how he thinks that the argument assumes universalism. And it's not that if a trait can't be named, I forget his exact wording, that then killing animals is not justified. If you can't name a trait, then you're just in this situation where apparently you're unclear about where your moral threshold is, right? Like, which, I mean, when you think about the implications of that, of not at least roughly knowing where the threshold is, it seems pretty crazy. Like, if you have a human over here and you have an animal over here, and there's some point where moral value is lost and you don't know, even roughly where it is. I mean, if you can't name a trait, I guess we're just to take it that you're morally ambiguous or like uncertain about the status of everything in between the trait equalization beginning and end point. I mean, what kind of beings would be in there? Well, a human with hoofs. Do you think that we should murder a human just for having hoofs? Let's continue.
Flawed systemically. So I don't know.
Flawed systemically, though. This is terrible. This is so bad.
Whether I could or couldn't.
Like, as if he's failing this hard right off the bat.
It wouldn't really do much one way or the other for my view.
It wouldn't do much one way or the other for my view. I mean, just the cringiness. Like, he doesn't really even understand what the question is saying. He's just thrown a bunch of slime words at the question, and now he's saying, like, it wouldn't even matter even if I could answer. It wouldn't do anything for me. It's like, okay. I mean, it's just a big excuse for David doesn't have an answer to the question. And, that's my argument, David. I'm happy to come on and have a nice, respectful conversation with you and talk this out. Of course, I like to rip on people when they fail like this, but it's not like I'm going to come on and, be mean to you. So maybe I'll call in at some point.
Okay, that kind of makes sense. So, thank you for the answer.
The caller, Brandon's like, that kind of makes sense. Like, I guess.
By the way, the reason that I asked this is because I have yet to find a trait that would make it morally acceptable to kill an animal, whether it be intelligence, their level of sentience. Because if you say, well, the chicken has the same amount of intelligence as an animal, would I kill a human that has the same amount of intelligence as that chicken? Well, no, I obviously wouldn't do that. So
yeah, so listen, I mean, that's not an argument I would even engage in, so I don't know that it makes sense to argue it with me, but let me...
It's not an argument I would engage in. Right, so I just take that to mean that you don't know how to respond to the argument, right? Why don't you just say, I don't have a good response to you, instead of I wouldn't engage with the argument, right? That's just, it's making it seem like, how do I say this? It's making it seem like that you're doing something legitimate by not engaging. It's making it seem like you have some credible reason, like you've made some evaluation about what kind of argument it is, and you don't engage with arguments of that sort, but you haven't actually like spelled out technically what the argument does and why there's a problem with it, right? You've just thrown words at it, black and white, line drawing, universalist, which like the only one I even really know what you mean there is universalist, and the argument applies to particularists. So just that I don't even know you get that. Fuck it, let's do the others too. Black and white. I mean, what would it mean for the argument to even be black and white? Like, I mean, I'm just not even clear on that. I can't actually do an analysis on that. I don't know what he means when he says that. And then drawing a line in the sand. I mean, it's asking you for at least some rough line that you feel comfortable with. Like, yeah, I mean, what is the line? What's the point between an animal and a human and an animal where the value is going to be lost if we start swapping out traits? I mean, I don't even know if that's how he means line in the sand, but I don't get it. Just throwing words at the argument and saying you wouldn't address it and acting like there's a problem with it is all just a bunch of hooey. It's not an answer. So, yeah, I think you're stumped, David.
Do this. Why is this name a trait thing?
Name the trait. Thank you.
Why do you?
At least it's better than name that trait. Policy.
You find it so important, or why does it feel like it's powerful to you?
Because it's based off of what I think is most valuable in humans, which obviously is subjective, which is sentience.
Well, now that's not quite true, Brandon. Name the trait doesn't. I don't know what it would mean for the argument to be based off of sentience. I mean, I think I know the kind of thing you're trying to say, though, which is that most people would be satisfied with the trait sentience, right? That seems like a legitimate reason to, for it to be okay to kill a being or something like this. If it's not sentient, like we will unplug people who are no longer sentient if they're like brain dead or something like this. So based on sentience, I mean, yeah, maybe in the sense that like sentience is a trait that most people would be happy with, and sentience isn't a trait that's absent in animals, right? So it's like one of the traits that would satisfy everybody is one that would not actually get you out of giving moral value to animals. But the argument doesn't actually like assume anywhere that you have to value sentience.
Ability to experience reality and to experience suffering and pain and well-being.
Okay. So, like, if there were plants that had some degree of sentience or animals that didn't, you'd be okay killing them?
Plants that had some degree of sentience or animals that didn't. Well, yeah, I mean, if there's a plant that would, like, sit here and, talk politics with you, if that thing's experiencing subjectively, like, I don't care if it's made of plant or animal cells, I wouldn't kill that thing. And if there's some animal that's no longer sentient, I wouldn't see what's wrong with killing it. It would be like killing a brain dead person.
Yeah, would I be okay with killing plants if they had sentience?
Yeah.
Great question. So,
at least he said if they have sentience instead of saying they do have sentience.
It depends. Like, obviously, this is more. It depends how practical it is. Now,
well, I guess that would then.
Well, that's kind of a weird answer. I think Brandon might be picturing something like if all of the plants in the world were sentient, and then we'd have some moral conundrum on our hands of like, how sentient are they, and are we actually going to be morally justified in killing them to survive? Like, is the, good of the human species sufficient to justify overriding their right to life and limiting their capacity for well-being? But if we just go to a basic situation of it's just a given plant and that plant is like as sentient as a human, I mean, like it seems pretty crazy to say it's fine to kill that plant.
Be what gets me. So I'm glad you mentioned that. That then sort of gets back to the original thing, because first you made a very sort of black and white statement, like for example, sentience would be the trait, but now you're saying that.
How, like, I just don't get his language. In what way is that black and white? Is it black and white because he thinks, like, sentience would be, like, the only trait? And now the guy's saying, oh, there's, like, maybe some practical concerns, so it's not as black and white? Maybe I think that's what he means, probably. But I don't know that this guy ever said that sentience was the only concern. Just that, in fact, I don't want to speak for this guy, actually, but I don't know if he actually made a statement that sentience is the only concern.
Practicality does actually play a role, so maybe it's not so black and white to begin with.
And the argument itself doesn't in any way assume that, moral situations are black and white. I don't know, like, I'd like to see you explain how the actual formal argument assumes morality is black and white, whatever exactly that means.
Right, well, you don't need to kill animals to get nutrition or anything like that.
Yeah, so actually, I'm not even going to say anything to that.
You need to eat plants, and you obviously will kill animals in the process of cropping plants.
Well, but hold on a second. Let's explore that, because hold on a second. You're saying you don't need to eat animals, but you need to eat plants.
I always hate the language of need, because, like, to survive, you need to eat like something, and it could be animals or plants. I don't get why need would apply like exclusively to plants. I just think all of that language is not great. Like the needless, unnecessary, all of those words are bad, right? Because look, if it, like the easiest way to explain why I don't like those words is like let's take like necessary for life, right? Now, if our moral concern is maximizing well-being, do we think that only doing things that are necessary for life would actually have the result of maximizing well-being? Well, I mean, I think it's very obvious that the answer to that question is no, right? So, I mean, it seems like if our concern is well-being, the necessity standard would actually run contrary to our moral values, right? I could elaborate on that kind of stuff, but I want to steer us away from using those words and towards just making this kind of proof by contradiction type argument, where we don't actually even need to specify in like all of these conditions about, you know, actually I don't want to be confusing. Like, I'd rather we just argue from logical consistency based on the values that we currently hold than start trying to determine like at what point killing is necessary and all of these sort of technical questions, because it just seems unnecessary. That was hilarious. It just seems unnecessary to get into all that. Unnecessary in the sense of like you can still make the case without invoking these words and opening all these rabbit holes, which like I think Pakman's about to try to grill him on. Necessity.
There are tribes that basically subsist on animal meat, animal blood, and animal milk. They don't need to do that any more than anyone needs to or doesn't need to eat plants, but they seem to be getting by without eating plants.
Right, okay, so now...
They don't need to do that more than anyone needs to be eating plants. Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about what you need to do to survive, I don't understand why you would, like, need plants to survive but not need animals to survive. Like, if what you mean is you could survive exclusively off plants but not exclusively off meat, or, like, you'd be healthier doing one than the other, maybe that could make sense, yeah.
If they need to, if they don't have a way of growing crops or like gathering plants and berries and that sort of thing, and they need to kill animals, I would say they would be justified in that.
Okay. So then...
yeah, I mean, that's... Well, I won't go down that moral rabbit hole, but, like, when... There's this whole thing where it's like, if someone needs to kill an animal to survive, people just assume that's justified, but the same argument applies, right? Like, I think, at least when you're talking about higher order animals, like, you know, if you're talking about, like, a deer or something, like... I think it would be very hard to morally justify killing a deer because you need to survive. Like, I think the ethical thing to do would actually just be to die. I mean, do you think that it would be okay to, like, what would the trait be? Do you think it's okay to, like, sacrifice a mentally disabled person if it's intelligence to survive, right? The same argument applies. But I would point out, even if you draw a different line with a survival situation, I could still run the argument on you in a non-survival situation, right? If we diverge on our answers to a survival situation question, we could still converge on our answer to a non-survival situation question.
Sentience is not really the black and white trait that you're saying is the most important consideration. There's...
Did he really say it was black and white though? Like, or did he just say? I guess did he say sentience is the only thing I could think of? I don't remember his wording. He may have said that.
There's other traits that are more important.
More important. I don't know if he said more important or also important.
Like need, for example.
That's exactly. It's based on necessity. Exactly.
Oh, so then what does sentience have to do with it?
Well,
yeah, I mean that's a good question actually. If this guy's saying it's based on necessity, then what is the whole sentience deal?
Well, that's kind of the baseline. That's the baseline, and I just think since we live in a...
What do you mean by saying it's the baseline? Like baseline for moral consideration? Like something gets consideration if it's sentient? I'm going to assume that's probably what he means.
In a society to where that it's not needed for our nutrition or our health or anything like that, I see it as completely unnecessary to kill a sentient being for basically no reason other than taste pleasure.
So like scallops don't appear to be sentient. Are you okay with scallop eating?
It's just standard Carnus tactic right there of like go to some moral gray area instead of contending with the actual difficult question, right? Like surely you should try to answer the question where it's actually challenging, like most challenging, with something like, you know, a cow, and not try to create a case that's easier for you to get off the hook with. And scallops, like, I mean, look, I don't know about brain science and stuff, so I mean, I've heard vegans who I consider respectable say that there's no more of a case for scallop sentience than plant sentience, right? I don't know if that's true or not. Just since I'm ignorant on the topic, I give them the precautionary principle, like I wouldn't eat them. But there's no way, even if it is a moral concern, that it's on par with killing like a mammal or something like this.
I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure they do have some sort of nervous system that they... You know, I'm not sure with the scallops. I don't eat them just because I'm not a scallop eater. I don't find them to be tasty. But I mean, if
so
they're not
taste
sentient,
matters, actually. It sounds like you're saying in this case you care more about the taste of scallops than their sentience.
Listen to these cheap gotchas. I would love to go on there because he would not be very successful at pulling cheap gotchas on me.
No. If they are sentient, I wouldn't eat them.
Right, but if they're not, you're saying you don't like the taste.
If they're not sentient, why would it even matter?
Exactly. I wouldn't see it as morally wrong to eat them, though, if they're not...
Why does he think that's funny? If they're not sentient, you wouldn't like the taste. It's like, okay, a plant isn't sentient, and maybe you don't like the taste of, like, I don't know, like carrot or something, and you don't eat carrot. Like, how's that different from just your attitude towards a plant food you don't like? It's not like he's saying something like, you know, there's some being that I clearly agree is sentient, and, you know, it just tastes so good that I'd murder it. That would be worth laughing at.
Sentience, exactly.
All right, appreciate it. I don't know that we're getting too much further, but it's a very, very interesting conversation. I'm glad you called in, and I'm going to let you go. I think most of the audience just gets so mad when vegan stuff comes up, and I think I might have indulged that longer than I should have.
Do they? Or does he just not want to deal with it? That's not like a rhetorical, like, my mind is made up thing. I'm just actually curious. Like, does his audience actually get mad when he talks about veganism? Or does he just want to get off the topic?
We're going to take a quick break. Don't hang up if you're holding, because we are taking more calls after the break. Stay on the phone line, 617-830-4750. We'll be back to the phones right after this.
Okay, well, that is the end of that. Check it out. I'm gonna make it disappear. Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe I'll try calling in to Pakman sometime. I also want to call in to Stefan Molyneux's show. I tried emailing them to get on that. Tried calling the Atheist Experience when Matt was on last. Didn't get through. But I'm gonna keep trying, and I will get through to some of these. Oh, and I got to call in to Beta, the Jesse Lee Peterson show. That's my goal. So yeah. Okay. That's all for today. I hope you guys enjoy the new accoutrement. I don't even know if I'm using that word right. More videos to come. Keep well till next time.